Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. Today is Sunday, December 24th in the year 2023. And I am here in lovely Escazú, Costa Rica, in my garden on my patio, and it's 10:15 a.m. And I figured I'd do this early because Merry Christmas. It is Christmas Eve. And I hope all of you have some festivities planned for tonight and tomorrow. And I knew that people would be looking for this, so I said I'm going to do this today and do it early. Okay, so much is happening in the week ahead in this last week of December because today's Sunday and next Sunday is the 31st. So we are officially in the last week of the year, the last week of December, and it is a really interesting, chock full of activity week astrologically. So let's get to it. Today, the sun is still in Capricorn, as it just entered Capricorn the other day, and it is making a very nice sextile to Saturn. And that is a very stabilizing influence. And interestingly enough, I don't see, all sorts of astrological discomfort, shall we say, over these next couple days, which is a good thing because sometimes we get like eclipses on Christmas and it can bring up stuff and emotions are like everywhere, and that's where we're not going this year, so that's actually good. However, we do have a full moon coming, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is a very nice stabilizing energy. Saturn in Pisces, the sun in Capricorn, and Saturn rules Capricorn, so we're in this nice flow between the sun and Saturn. So that's a good thing. It's not bringing us any really harsh aspects. So this is smooth. It's practical. Even though Mercury's retrograde, it still sort of smooths out these next couple of days, which I think is very helpful. Tomorrow on Christmas Day, we get Venus trine Neptune at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time, and this is really lovely. Venus and Neptune work well together, and they harmonize together when they're in this trine, which is a smooth flowing aspect. And it's so lovely, and it's perfect for a holiday. And it's about unconditional love. It's about opening your heart. It's about pleasantries and beauty and gratitude and spirituality and nature. And it's such a very pleasant, beautiful aspect that this is a great time to express your love and your gratitude for your family, for your friends, for the people around you that have been with you all year, the people who have supported you all year and who have been aligned with you all year, and just a really lovely place in the zodiac for this emotional, because both planets are in water signs. Venus is in Scorpio, Neptune is in Pisces, and this is a really beautiful, lovely place. And I think it's nice as Venus moves through Scorpio that Venus and Neptune touch each other in this very beautiful way. It's heartwarming. So this is great. And I mean, it's in aspect now. It's just exact tomorrow. And so this just puts us in a really good, calm place for the holiday. And I think that's particularly lovely. Then we have this Tuesday, the 26th, which is a very interesting day. And this is the full moon. So the full moon is in Cancer, of course, because we are in the time of year that is Capricorn. So the sun is in Capricorn and the moon is in Cancer. And so we're going to probably feel this full moon a little bit tomorrow on Christmas, but it will happen on Tuesday the 26th. And that is at 7:33 p.m. Eastern Time. So will be, in this region of the world, it will be dark. And I'm in Costa Rica, so it'll be 6:33 p.m. It'll be dinner time for me on the 26th. And that's a good night to go. I can already see it in the sky because it's been close to Jupiter because it was in Taurus, and really beautiful, like the moon next to Jupiter. And it was like right above me the other night when a couple of us were out having dinner. It was really, really beautiful. So keep looking for it. It's really beautiful as it's becoming full in the sky. Also on Tuesday, Chiron goes direct, and that is at 10:10 p.m. And Chiron is in the sign of Aries, and You know, Chiron is all about our wounds. Chiron is where we're wounded. And when it's transiting is different, of course, than where you have it in your chart. And so having it in Aries is about the individual perspective, the connection to self. And Chiron and Aries often, we're in an interesting dynamic with the nodes north in Aries and the south in Libra. Both Chiron and Aries and the North Node in Aries are telling us to pay attention to ourselves and our own needs and wants and what we need, as opposed to pleasing others and bending over backwards to please other people. And South Node in Libra can be very people pleasing. Chiron in Aries is I got wounded because I wasn't listening to myself, or I was trying to be helpful to others or pleasing others, and I wasn't listening to me. And so it's a similar vibe. And so even as we approach the holiday, and with Chiron stationing, that could add a little bit of a tender moment with the holiday. So it's the station. Chiron's not direct until later on Tuesday night in this region of the world. And it could be a very tender moment. Now, the Venus-Neptune can help smooth that over, because you might have a moment of sadness or a moment of a tear or a moment of deep empathy for someone else. And this is often what happens when Chiron is stationing. So this is a moment, okay? And don't let it overtake you. It's a moment. If you are having Chiron right to a planet, then it could be something very deep for you as this stations and moves forwards. But I really think that it could be just a moment of reflection. And Venus Neptune can be reflection as well. It doesn't mean swinging parties. That we get to that later in the week. But Venus and Neptune are really a moment of empathy, compassion, sensitivity, in addition to the normal like creativity, heart opening, those things. But we want to pay attention to you got to pay attention to your feelings. Christmas brings up stuff. It brings up stuff for people. It always does. Whether you've lost your family, your parents, and you're alone, whether you are with strangers, everyone feels they need to be with someone, or they need to respond to the holiday. It's an expectation. But it doesn't have to be that way. And as long as you feel you are doing what's in your heart, whether maybe you just go do volunteer work on the holiday, maybe you go and spend it with friends, it doesn't matter as long as your heart is full. And it's so important to take time, because otherwise it's just another day and it's the same old thing. And then we have this itch to do work or chores or something. And it's important that you take time. It's a little poignant with Chiron going direct, but I really feel, and at the full moon, and I really feel it's just, it might bring emotions. So allow them, let them move through you. Do what's right for you. Absolutely. I was moved to write about my late partner on Instagram the other day, and it was the solstice, and he was British, so we went to Glastonbury and Stonehenge in our relationship, and we used to go to these places because they were the sacred sites of England. And he loved those places. And solstice was always important to him because he was an astrologer like me. And so as we enter the time of Capricorn and we enter the solstice, whether it's winter up north or summer down south, we're entering a new season, a new time, another point on the cardinal axis. And that cardinal axis, which is the beginning of Capricorn, the beginning of Cancer, the beginning of Libra, the beginning of Aries, these are moments when we are shifting perspective, shifting seasons. Here, of course, like I've said, there's no season change. There's a little bit of a season change, but not on the solstice. But this is important to connect to, because right now it's the time when the sun is having the shortest days, and now the sun is starting to come back to us. The days will get longer, and we'll have more sunlight. And as it, gets closer to the next solstice, which is in June, and when we have the longest days. So we've just experienced the longest night, the longest period of darkness, which is always highly metaphorical for where we are. And this is all, remember what I was saying last week and the week before. Saturn rules this time of year. We're no longer in that Sagittarius sun period. We're in the period of Saturn. And this was, there was also the ancient pagan feast of Saturnalia, which celebrated the solstice, and the shortest day of the year. And it's the death of the sun god. So this is the time of year when it is the death of the sun god and then reborn again at Christmas. And this is when the light starts to come back and you really start to notice it. When I was a kid, my mother used to say, oh yeah, we start seeing the light come back after New Year's. Yeah, that's when you really notice it. You're like, oh yeah, it's later out. It's a little later. Maybe it's 20 minutes later or 15 minutes later. But the light is around longer. Yes, and this is the moment of darkness. So it is the time to go inside. Go within. Take your moments, especially with Chiron going direct, and you have these social energies with Venus and Neptune. But the solstice, the time of Saturn, the sun and Saturn connecting, and then also this Chiron going direct and the full moon. This is a lot of energy right now. That is asking us, full moons, people often want to go have tears and emotions during full moons. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't think, oh, my Christmas was ruined. I was in this mood. Go deal with your mood. Take time out. Take a half an hour. Go by yourself. Go meditate. Go for a walk. And allow these emotions to come because they're big right now. And some Christmases go past us and it was just like, yeah, it's a lot of Venus, Jupiter. No, this isn't one of those. This is sensitive and lovely, and it allows us to go deep because of the Venus Neptune. But there's not harsh aspects, thankfully. There's no like Saturn with an eclipse, okay? And but it is softening. This is about softening into your feelings. And that's what we're doing right now. We're softening into those feelings and allowing them to come forward. So then we start getting into Wednesday when we have the sun trining Jupiter. And the sun and Jupiter are like in a good place. So that's good because the sun's in Capricorn and Jupiter's in Taurus. And Jupiter is slowing down because it's going to go direct. But the sun in Capricorn and Jupiter in Taurus, this is earthly pleasures. This is people going and getting sales after Christmas in their favorite stores. The after Christmas bargain bonanza extravaganza. But also it's pleasant and it's lovely and it's still more of the same of going with this flow in life and the experience of, gently allowing things to come forward and being in the flow. So we're looking at some very good, some poignancy, but some very good aspects that are supporting us during this time. Now, the other day, I think was very high energy, and that was like Friday. I didn't sleep well Thursday night. I was exhausted on Friday. Friday had a lot of energy. That was the one I was talking about last week, where Mercury was going into Sagittarius backwards, and the sun was going forwards into Capricorn from Sagittarius, and they were meeting, high-fiving each other, and going in opposite directions. And so that's when Mercury was combust. And I felt the energy now has calmed down quite a bit. But when Mercury's combust, Mercury's the intellectual planet. Mercury's high energy. Mercury's like, yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Yeah. I've got lots of thoughts. I've got lots of ideas. I've got lots of details. And Mercury and the sun, when they're together and they conjunct, which they inevitably do to the halfway point of Mercury retrograde, they are electrified in some ways. Uranus isn't involved, but they're electrified because Mercury and the sun get very close to one another in that they're conjunct, and the sun zaps Mercury with all that fiery energy. Yes, that's what combust is. Something, when something's like combustion. Yes, that's what that means. But Mercury's behaving itself now. It's doing that square to Neptune late Tuesday, early Wednesday, 2:43 a.m. Eastern time. And remember, Mercury squared Neptune before Mercury went retrograde. So there was something that was speaking to us, something intuitive, something creative, something deep within us. And it's possible a new message and a new part of that story comes forward on Wednesday. And I spoke of that. I spoke of it on Instagram. I spoke of it here on the podcast, that it is Mercury and Neptune can be a little confusing. They could be misinformed. It could be, you know, very psychic, intuitive information that you receive for yourself. This is a very significant kind of aspect where we're feeling that intuitive wafting of information and energy to us. Okay, so pay attention to that. This isn't a week to like kind of shut down and ignore things. It is a week to pay attention because we have a lot going on and we're going to be processing a lot of information and energy. And that's the thing. I know it's holiday time. People all over the world are taking vacations. Here, everybody goes to the beach. But we're having so much planetary activity talking to one another that I think that, and I feel that this is going to be a week of information, processing information, because Mercury is very active, and a week of processing emotions and perhaps gaining new perspective. This is still Mercury retrograde, and it is still a time to step back and recognize things and sort through stuff. Even if you're chopping onions for Christmas dinner, you know, this is a week of gaining perspective. So much is happening astrologically, and full moons are always great times to gain emotional perspective and sense into things. It's the full moon in Cancer, for Pete's sake. It's a water sign. So, you know, the full moon in Cancer doesn't always coincide with the holidays. It can also be later in Capricorn season, which could be mid-January. But it's an important moment right now to sense into things, be present for yourself and whatever you're feeling. I always say that, right? But this week is more sensitive to that. And if you are feeling sensitive, remember to go lick your wounds if you feel you need to, because of Chiron going direct, okay? Later in the week, we start to get some more rock and roll, like fun times rock and roll, as Venus leaves Scorpio and goes into Sagittarius on Friday the 29th at 3:24 p.m. So Venus is going to finish up her tour of duty in Scorpio, where she's not entirely happy. And I can tell you that I always feel that shift from Venus and Scorpio to Venus and Sag. It's like whoosh, something gets lifted. The heavier, deeper energies of Scorpio give way to the lighter, more frivolous party energies of Sagittarius. And so while we may be feeling sensitive and maybe a little emotional earlier in the week, we're going to give way to like a little more frivolity as Venus moves into Sagittarius. And so then she'll be there for about a month or so. So she's here Friday the 29th. She moves in 3:24 p.m. Eastern Time. And then the next day, on the 30th, one of the moments we've been waiting for, Jupiter goes direct. 9:40 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturday the 30th. So Jupiter is going to be direct for New Year's Eve. Venus will have just moved into Jupiter's domain the day before. Now we're getting release. Now we're starting to relax. Now we're starting to feel abundant. We're starting to have fun. We're starting to release last year. Because remember, when Mercury goes retrograde, we're always in that place, that dynamic place of review. Review, reveal, revise, rewire, everything, all the re's, right? When it happens, as I've said before in this space, when it happens at the end of the year, the very end of the year, it really is a deep period of review of where we've been, whether it's, these last months, this last year, what this year has looked like to us. And so those energies are still with us till January 1st, but really I think it's going to start to lighten up Friday the 29th when Venus moves into Sagittarius. And so we're still with some sensitivities. I think this week is kind of split into two kinds of energies. There's the earlier part of the week where we're more sensitive, we're gathering with others, or maybe we want to be alone. We have a desire to nurture ourselves, under that Cancer full moon, nurture, be there for others, connect, be sensitive, be listening to emotions, feeling into that, really deeply connecting, taking moments of that and connecting with that. And then we can release. Then we can move forward a little more energetically, fiery, Jupiter going direct, Venus. And here's what's really interesting. Venus is in Jupiter's sign. Venus is going to go into Sag. That's big. Jupiter is in Venus's sign, right? Jupiter's in Taurus. So this is really connected. I think this is going to be a happy new year. There's always stuff. There's always things in the world. You always hear some stories. But for the most part, I think this is like we're really releasing this past year. So focus on this week. I know it's holiday. You're like, well, I got my family here. People are here from out of town. Blah. Deb, what are you talking about? I can't go. Yes, you take some moments and you go for a walk, or you take a moment even before you go to sleep at night to be grateful, to have a space of recognition and a space of peace, finding that space of peace earlier in the week. And then you're going to feel like you're releasing this year into the ethers. You're saying gratitude for this year. No matter, I think this year, I feel like this year has been rough. I don't think it was rough in the same way 2020 was rough, but I think it's been a complicated year as Pluto makes this transition, this back and forth of an outer planet. We're ending a cycle, we're beginning a new one. And this has been very sensitive. And I think we're ending a very sensitive, complicated year. And so when we are saying goodbye to this year, I, for one, am going to be very pleased to let this year go. I don't say this every year, but this year, I think it's been, they describe this, I would describe this as the alchemical experience of coagulation. And so coagulation is good on, you want your blood to coagulate, right? Coagulation is good on some terms, but it's becoming earth. It's very earthbound and and that's how I feel in these last weeks, especially it can be stuck, and I don't think we were stuck in this year so much, but the energy did not feel lofty or light. We're really in this coagulation place that's churning into a place of adherence or churning into this place of earthiness or concrete, as my alchemy deck describes. But this is so important to recognize, because when we start to see this Jupiter-Venus push at the end of the year, and as I've said before, the end of this year is a very big push forward, with Jupiter going direct and then Mercury the next day or so, the next 48 hours or less, and Venus going into Sag. This is a big relief. So I think there's going to be a big relief at the end of this year as we release something. But this is, we're going to feel better. I think we're always feeling better when Mercury goes direct. And then sometimes the shadow's a little rough, but and then Jupiter going direct is always going to feel better. And Venus going to Sag is always going to go better. So in these last moments of 2023, we are going to start to feel better. So the next time I see you or you hear me on this podcast, which I'll do, daytime New Year's Eve, is really we're going to have some experience of having these shifts already in place. So by the time I do this podcast again, there will be several shifts that have occurred, and we're going to get to sense, and I'll describe what that release feels like. So stay tuned. But this is a very important thing to notice. It is like when I say that advanced state of stuckness or that feeling of concrete or coagulation, it's about earth, okay? It's about earthiness. And when you've got to turn the soil to plant your seeds, it's like that. It's sometimes the earth is really hard. It's dense. And right now, like here in Costa Rica, okay, the earth isn't as pliable because it stopped raining. So if I want to dig and plant something, I have to dig harder, or I've got to soften the earth with water. And, leave the hose on and let the water flow and dig up what I need to dig up. So if maybe you want to move a plant, maybe you want to plant a new plant, but putting your seeds in the earth now, which is fine, it is really about kind of getting into that earth and digging up the earth. Now, that being said, what is earth in astrology? Well, there's Taurus, which is where Jupiter is, and there's Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, which is retrograde, and then there's Capricorn, which is where Pluto is. For a little less than a month now, it's going to be in Earth, and then it's going to go into air. So my feeling about this is that we are feeling that coagulation of Pluto at the end of an Earth sign. Because, like I said, this is the end of a cycle, but it's also the end of an era. Okay? So I expect this coagulation feeling to come back next September through mid-November next year, when it's the last moments of Pluto in Capricorn. And so Pluto in Sagittarius, that when it left 15 years ago, was this fire into Earth feeling. And now we're getting Earth into air, which is loftier and lighter and not coagulated. Okay, so not that we've been stuck in coagulation for 15 years. I don't believe that, but I believe right now that's what it feels like. And if I had to put my finger on it, I would call it coagulation. And so this experience of the end of a year and then the end of an era within the next month is very deep endings right now. Very deep endings. And we all have to acknowledge it. So what are you ending? What are you ending in your life? What are you saying goodbye to as this year closes? Because we look at our lives, like typically you look at your life in the time periods of these years and months, and however, like you'll might Friday night say, "Oof, what a rough week. Oof, it's like a crazy month." Something, and then the year ends, and then we look at our lives because we've set up our calendar, Saturn, this way. And we look at how we have fared during the last 12 months, and we begin a new cycle. But we're ending the cycle of a year. We're ending the cycle of Pluto in Capricorn next month, and we're ending the era this coming year. So there's like Pluto's going to spend more time in Aquarius than in Capricorn in 2024. So I look forward to that release of coagulation. And I feel like some of that is going to get stirred up and released in these last few days of the year as Venus moves into Sag and as Jupiter goes forward, even though Jupiter's in an Earth sign. It's going to be some relief, piece by piece, over these next weeks. So what part of your life feels like it's in coagulation? It's a little too much advanced state of coagulation. There's this feeling of maybe a little bit of stuckness. And then we always look to the new year as like, I'm going to get unstuck this year. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do these other things instead. I'm going to, and what's more important is I'm going to feel into what I want. And this is what I was talking about in my lecture the other night. Oh, yes, my lecture the other night. So I gave that lecture, Vision of the Future 2024, and it is still available for you to receive. If you'd like to buy it, you can come email me, deb@debmcbride.com. And you can go to Instagram. I usually have it in stories to purchase with a link. But you go to my website, you can purchase it there. But the important thing about that lecture, and here it is, folks, and here's the 11th moment of the the 11th hour, the 11th minute, the last of the podcast here. I want to tell you, I was in this lecture, and you want to talk about the breakup of coagulation. I was in this lecture, and I hope you listen to the end of this podcast because this is a very important moment we're going to talk about. My friend Claudia attended, and she said, there's going to be 72 elections in the world in 2024. And I said, that's, we were saying, wow, that's incredible, throughout the world. And it's never happened in history. Okay, so we talk about this, and you can see it live and happening if you get the recording. And she's talking about these 72 elections. Now, I don't know all 72 countries. I guess we could look them up that are going to have elections. I know the United States is one of them. But 72 countries will have elections, and this has never happened, or this is historically, not in our lifetime especially, it hasn't happened. So this is important, and I said, when she said that, that's going to be major shifts and changes in the world and into the global environment. This is going to be, and as I said that, an earthquake happened here in Costa Rica. So here I was saying these very words, and in that very moment, not 5 minutes later, not before, not earlier as we began the lecture, my Zoom masterclass, I uttered those words, great shifts and changes in the new year, next year with those 72 elections globally, in the global atmosphere, in the global world, the earthquake hit here. And of course, everybody else wasn't in Costa Rica on the experience on my masterclass. And I said, girls, we just had an earthquake here. And they were like, you are kidding me. And I was like, no, we just had an earthquake. And it felt big, It was a 3.7. And it felt bigger to me. But no damage was done. It just felt like the house shook from left to right and then sort of back again. And that's what they do. They feel like they go from left to right, or right to left, or up to down, or something. But this was an earthquake. So I consider that a moment of the earth shifting. I said there's going to be shifts and changes in the global experience in the world, and you can watch that if you already have the video, or you were there and you experienced it, or if you want to purchase it, you can watch it happen. And I can say it was an earthquake. It was and from my perspective, of course, I'm uttering these words, and then this earthquake happens, and so this is confirmation, and truer words have never been spoken, and the coagulation is being shaken up. So any state of coagulation, to me, what this tells me is any state of coagulation that we've experienced in this last year and what's coming next year, it's all going to get shaken up. Aquarius is a shaky sign, Hey, I'm an Aquarius, and I know this. It's like we're not an earth sign. It's not Capricorn anymore. We're going into this big Aquarian experience. So I'm proud of that moment, sort of. And I was just like, I was calling my friends saying, can you believe it? There was an earthquake. And I was saying these very words at that moment. And oh my God. So that was the moment of the week for me. I was like, whoa. And I have to say, nature will never fail you. Never. She will speak to you at the absolute correct moments. Absolutely. And so, I've gotten used to these things here. And sometimes you do, like, I feel my heart pounding afterwards. But I was keeping it together because I was speaking to people in an audience. But it was so important. Nature was really speaking to us in that moment. And I invite you to get the video and watch it, because it was a moment. And I do believe that this was something deep and profound that I was connecting to. When I do these things, when I do my podcast, when I do my lectures, when I talk to someone in session, there's a certain amount of channeling that I'm doing. That energy is coming through me, and words are coming to me from spirit. So, that was no exception. That was a big moment. So we have to look forward to these changes and these shifts in the new year. So what I want you to do this week is to connect with your emotions, connect with your feelings, connect with things that are deeply embedded, wounded, connected in these next days, whatever you're feeling, and then release everything. Do a big release ritual, light some candles, clear your space, do a big space cleanse Friday, Saturday. Do this big space cleanse as Jupiter moves forward, as Venus embraces Sagittarius, Jupiter's domain, and we go into a bigger, better energy at this end of the year. And we pray to end this coagulation over these next weeks and move forward. And I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas if you're celebrating, a beautiful holiday. I hope it is filled with joy and abundance for you. And I am here and available to speak to anyone. If you'd like to contact me for a session or anything, My website is thegoldenastrologer.com. My Instagram is the Golden Astrologer, and this podcast is the Golden Astrologer Podcast. And I'm available for Reiki, for astrology, obviously, and for expansion mentoring. And as Jupiter goes forward, we can embrace our own expansion. So come join me in expansion mentoring 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. As we move into the new year, it may be exactly what you need and help you overcome coagulation. And I wish you a beautiful week, a beautiful holiday. Thank you so much for listening. Gratitude to all of you at this wonderful time of the year in this perfectly beautiful holiday season. Thank you for listening. Have a beautiful week.